morning. Thank you so much, Nick, for being here with us. Can we please start with an introduction?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Nick O'Dowd. I am the Trustline Program Director here. I work for a nonprofit agency, which is called the California Child Care Resource and Referral Network, which we offer a lot of different programs for, families looking for child care and child care providers. But specifically, I work on the Trustline Background Check program, which is a background check. It's actually run through the state of California, through the California Department of Social Services. But the agency I work for, again, the nonprofit agency, the California Child Care Resource and Referral Network, we contract with the state to kind of help with the implementation of the Trustline Background Check program. So I've been working here for about 8.5 years, I believe, and recently our longtime program director, Cindy Mall, retired, and so I've stepped into those shoes as the program director here for the Trustline program.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Can you tell us a little bit more about exactly what the background check clearance entails, what it is, how it works, and how can people apply?
Yeah, so Trustline, it was, I think, kind of originally set up for what they call license exempt childcare providers. Now, of course, over the years, different types of positions or jobs have kind of started using the background check, and anyone who wants to go through the Trustline background check is welcome. It was kind of started for license exempt childcare providers, and so what that means is right, so there's licensed childcare providers. So, a licensed preschool or licensed daycare in California, again, are required to be licensed through the state. All of the employees at those facilities go through a background check, right, in order to be licensed. That's part of the licensing process. The employees at those facilities have to go through a background check. Now, a license exempt provider would be like a nanny or a babysitter typically, right? Someone who is not required to be licensed to provide childcare, but still, provides childcare. And so Trustline was kind of essentially created so that those license exempt providers, like a nanny or babysitter, could get the same exact background check that a licensed provider would go through. And so just like licensed childcare providers, the background check's done through the California Department of Social Services. It checks the same databases, has the same criteria and all of that. And so what it entails or what it checks is, so, in order to go through Trustline, you have to submit an application and submit a fingerprint submission. There's also an application fee, which is $43, and then there's a fee when you go to submit fingerprints. You have to pay a fee for that live scan, which varies a little bit depending on the location you go to. So usually, I would say about $90 is a pretty average cost. But yeah, so when you submit your fingerprints, right, your information gets sent off to the California or the Department of Justice, and they run your information through 3 databases, which one is the California Criminal History System. So, that's going to get any sort of criminal history that occurred in California, even if it was an arrest only and there was no conviction, or, even if it's been expunged from someone's record. Any sort of criminal history in California will show up going back to the age of 18. It also does a one-time check of an FBI database. So that looks for any federal level crimes that may have happened in any of the 50 states. Right. And then the third check is the Child Abuse Central Index, or what they call CACI, which looks for any substantiated child abuse claims. So again, something that might not be criminal history related, but more of a substantiated child abuse claim would show up in that CACI, or Child Abuse Central Index check. And so when you submit your fingerprints, again, it goes off to the DOJ. They run the information through those 3 databases, and then they send the results of that to the California Department of Social Services, right, who conduct the background check. of course, if nothing at all shows up, then it clears right away. Um, if something does come up in the background, if there is some sort of criminal history or substantiated child abuse claim that comes up, then the California Department of Social Services is going to follow their criteria to kind of look into that and make a decision as to whether that person would be denied or be able to be registered with Trustline based on that criminal history. So they're looking at, seriousness of a crime, how long ago it occurred, how many incidences someone may have, or basically on a case-by-case basis, they're looking at the kind of the particular situation that may have occurred. And so with that, they have it's 60, they may have added a new one, so it might be 61, but there's 60 or 61 like crime categories that the state has listed as what they call non-exemptable crimes, which means that if someone has been convicted of one of those, 61 crimes, then it's an automatic denial, right? They're not allowed to go through an exemption process. They're just denied. They don't, have a chance to clear, basically. If something comes in and it's not one of those, 61 crimes, then the applicant has a chance to go through what's called an exemption process. And actually with that, there's kind of two paths it can take. One is what they call a simplified exemption, which if it meets certain criteria, which I'm not exactly sure what that is off the top of my head right now, but if it was if there's only one incident that happened and it was a minor crime and it was over so many years ago, the state has the ability to kind of look at that and just say, okay, that's not really a concern, and have the person continue through and be registered. They have the option to do that. They still could have the person go through the full exemption process, which the full exemption process would be, if someone goes through the background check, they have some criminal history, it doesn't meet the non-exemptable criteria, but it also doesn't meet the criteria to be a simplified exemption, then they'll have to go through a full exemption, which in that process, the state, the California Department of Social Services would send to that applicant what they call an exemption needed letter, where they ask the applicant to provide additional documentation. So that's usually a written statement from the applicant about exactly what happened and maybe what they've done since then to kind of ensure they won't be involved in criminal activity in the future. They also ask the applicant to provide 3 character reference letters from 3 people they know, I believe non-family members, to kind of send that reference on their behalf. And so, they require that the applicant turns in these additional documents. If the applicant does not follow through and submit those additional exemption needed documents, then they'll eventually be denied, right? They have 45 days basically to submit that information. If they don't, they'll end up, being closed or not being registered with Trustline. If they do submit those documents, then the California Department of Social Services will review everything. They also may, on their own end, the California Department of Social Services a lot of times will reach out to local law enforcement agencies, that maybe made the arrest and try to get documentation there, like arrest reports or things like that. So the California Department of Social Services, again, will collect everything they need, review it all, and then eventually make the decision as to whether that person will be granted an exemption and be registered with Trustline, or whether they'll be denied the exemption and not become registered with Trustline.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was so informative. So you say that basically anybody could apply. They don't necessarily have to be nannies or caregivers. Anybody that is going to be working with the public in general needs a clearance is able to apply for that, correct?
That's right. Yeah. There's certain positions, certain jobs where it is a requirement. But yeah, anyone can go through the background check who wants to.
Perfect. And what's the age minimum?
18, basically, like I was saying before. And actually that reminded me of something, but the background check only goes back to the age of 18. Typically, you know, records when someone was a minor that might have occurred when someone was a minor, those records I believe are usually sealed, and so they don't have access to those kind of things. So really, if someone's under 18, there's nothing that we're gonna check. There's nothing to check anyway, you know, but really it's 18 and older is the age limit. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So that also reminded me of something, you know, from the previous question that I forgot to mention is, so even after someone is registered with Trustline, right? They go through the background check, they clear, they become registered. It stays updated on a per incident basis, at least within California, right? So like I mentioned before, the FBI check is just a one-time check right now. Now in the future, I think that's going to change. I don't know how far it is away. I would guess maybe a couple years. But right now, the FBI check is just one time. So when the person first applies, their information goes through that FBI database. But for California, like I say, it's updated on a per incident basis. So the Department of Social Services, they have what's called a wrap back service with the DOJ. So again, even after someone's cleared with Trustline, going forward from that point in time, if they get arrested in California, for example, right, that new information, that subsequent rap sheet would automatically come in to the California Department of Social Services, and then they would take that new information, you know, do their due process, but someone can potentially be revoked, you know, going forward, even after they initially clear if there's any kind of new criminal history information that comes in.
Got it. And how do employers, they just go to the your website and are able to check the status of their clearance?
Well, no, it's not quite that simple. So, and there's a difference, I guess, between when you say employers, maybe there's a little difference between families and parents who may be the employer versus like a
Yes.
nanny agency, right? So, nanny agencies can contact us and kind of get set up with us to have their own accounts, kind of, and then they have a little more access as an agency. And there's actually a law in California that requires agencies, nanny agencies, that anyone they refer out, you know, is required to be on the Trustline registry. Now, again, that law, that requirement is towards like nanny agencies. So a parent, of course, can hire who they want, whether that person's registered with Trustline or not. But for a parent, they don't quite have that same access as an agency was. So they would actually have to contact us, which you can either call us. We have a 1-800 number. We answer Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. Or you can email us at any time. And we just need the person's first and last name, and then their ID or driver's license number. And then we would look up that person in our system and let you know what their current status is. We could also provide a letter, you know, at that time, kind of showing verification whether they're registered or not. So for a parent or family, they actually have to contact us, provide the person's information, and then we can verify what their status is.
Got it. And as far as the requirements for legal status, if somebody's going through the process, do they have to be a permanent resident, citizen, or pretty much that's not a requirement for this particular clearance?
No, that's not a requirement, but there is a requirement on identification, right? So I mentioned that, you know, to check someone's status, we need their ID or their driver's license number. And so when someone applies to Trustline, they're required to have, you know, one of the accepted forms of ID, which would basically be a state-issued driver's license. That could be a driver's license from any of the 50 states, right? A state-issued identification card, same thing, you know, good for any of the 50 states, or a permanent resident card would be the third form of ID accepted. So when someone applies, they have to have one of those forms of ID to provide it, you know, when they get fingerprinted and on their application. So that's kind of where the requirement lies. It's not about residency. It's more they just have to have one of those forms of ID.
Do you accept foreign passports?
They do not accept passports, no.
Got it. Okay, perfect. And there's two ways to apply, correct? There's you could do the paper application or you could apply it online. Can you talk about the difference between the two and one, will be more convenient than the other one?
Yeah, so really convenience, I guess, is up to the consumer. The online process will be a little faster, right? You don't have to mail anything in, you don't have to write a check, you can kind of pay all right online, so it'll be a little bit faster. But yeah, so the paper application basically, you can contact us or go to our website or and request an application, or again, call us or email us, and we can send out the paper application. You basically have to print out a copy. The applicant would fill all their information in on it, right? Name, address, ID number, date of birth, pretty basic information. And then they would take that application, take that paper application in with them to any live scan location to get their fingerprint scanned, right? Again, they'll pay the fee there for that live scan. Again, it varies by location, but usually I'd say around $90. Pay that fee, have their fingerprint scanned. The live scan technician will fill out a little section of their application. And then they'll return it, or return at least a copy, to the applicant. At that point, the applicant would have to mail that in to the California Department of Social Services, along with a check or money order of $43. So they fill out the paper application, take it with them to a live scan location, get fingerprinted, and then mail it in with a check, basically. For the online process, we have basically an instruction form of how someone can apply online. I'll make sure that you have a copy of that. You can send out to anyone who needs it, or again, anyone can contact us if they need a copy of it. But basically, this online instruction form, it gives you a link to this online web portal. It's called Guardian. And so you click the link, it takes you to that website. The first step is to create an account on there. So you click a button to register as a new user. You kind of put in your information, which is your name and email address and date of birth. Now, when you do that, there's a couple of required fields. Gabriella, would you like me to show my screen and kind of show? Okay. So here's this online instruction form I was referencing, right? And so again, Gabriella, I'll make sure you have access to this. You can send it out to people, or they can always contact us. And again, it kind of gives step-by-step instructions of how to apply online. And so you'll see the first step, it gives a link to this Guardian web portal that I was referencing. And then, you get to this screen where if you already had an account, you would log in. But assuming you don't already have an account, you're going to click this button to register as a new user. And then here, again, you'll put in first name, last name, date of birth, email address, phone number. Now, you'll notice, this is kind of why I wanted to show my screen as well, because you'll notice there's these other fields: social security number, background check ID, and driver's license number. And these fields are not required. It doesn't make you put anything into these fields. But if you'll notice the left-hand side here, kind of the fine print, we really do encourage you to, I would say, at least put in your driver's license or ID number if you have one. Your driver's license and social, both would be great. Background check ID number, you're not going to have one yet if you haven't applied to any background checks, so you can ignore that one. But it's really good to put in as much information as possible so it doesn't create any errors, especially what we call a duplicate profile in the system, because you're putting your information into the computer here, and then when you get your fingerprint scanned, information is going to be sent from your fingerprint scan. And so for those two things to kind of match up together, it's looking for one of these numbers, one of these unique identifying numbers to kind of match everything, right? Name and date of birth is not enough. There's a lot of people who have the same name and same date of birth. So it's looking for one of these unique identifying numbers to match the application information you're going to submit here, and the fingerprint information that comes in. And so I would highly suggest you put in at least your driver's license or ID number, if not both, your ID and social security number if you feel comfortable with that. And again, to apply to Trustline, you need a state-issued ID, driver's license, or permanent resident card anyway. I know it doesn't list permanent resident card here, but you know, driver's license or ID number, I would say, is a key one if you have that. So basically, you'll put in all this information and then you'll click the register button. Now, once you click that button to register, you're gonna get an email sent to the email address you enter here. It'll just come right away. And that email is gonna include your login credentials, which includes a temporary password. So then it'll have a link to it to kind of get you back to this page. And then once you're back here, instead of registering as a new user, you can go ahead and just log in. So you'll put in your email address. The first time you log in, you'll put in that temporary password that's sent to you in the email, and then you'll be able to log in and kind of finish setting up your account, right? Once you're in, it's going to ask you for an agency PIN number, which you can see is listed up here and also in you know, step number 4 here. So you'll put in that agency PIN number, and then basically you just go through the application, you know, put in all your information, name, address, ID number, answer all the questions. You'll get to a page where you'll have to make that $43 payment, which you'll make right online there with a credit or debit card. One thing to mention there is the system does not accept either an American Express or a Discover card, so it'll have to be a different form of payment. But otherwise, you'll put in your, you know, debit or credit card information, pay the fee, and then even after you pay the fee, make sure you go through to the final page and click finish, you know, to submit everything. Once your application is submitted, the system's going to automatically generate a pre-populated live scan form. So that live scan form is going to have, you know, your name, your ID number, date of birth, all your information will be pre-printed on there basically, but you'll just need to print out a copy of that live scan form, and then you can take it in with you to any live scan location and have your fingerprint scanned. And then that'll be it. You'll be done. You don't have to mail in that form. You don't have to go back and upload it. You just print the form and then take it in and go get your fingerprint scanned. That's it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And what's the difference in time between the paper application than that online process?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that affect time. One, like you said, is the way you apply. So if you mail in the paper application, I would say it's going to take 2 to 4 weeks probably for your application to be received by the state and processed, and then to cash your check and all of that. So I would say if you have nothing in your background, no sort of criminal history at all, and you use the paper mail-in process, I would say about 2 to 4 weeks from the time you mail everything in. Now, if you do it online, your application, payment, and all of that is going to be done already, you know, initially, because you go in and do that yourself. Then you print the live scan form and go get fingerprinted. And again, if you have nothing in your background, no sort of criminal history at all, the results from those fingerprints should come back pretty quickly. So I would say in that case, you'd probably clear within a day or two, typically. You know, sometimes it's a little bit delayed, but usually, you know, it can be as early as the next day, but maybe a couple days. Now, the caveat, which is why I keep seeing, if you have nothing in your background, if you have no sort of criminal history, you know, those are the time frames. Either way, whether you mail it in or whether you do it online, if you do have some sort of criminal history that comes up in the background check, or child abuse, you know, substantiated child abuse claims, anything that shows up in the background check, in that case, you know, it's going to go to that kind of exemption process potentially that we talked about earlier. And so that's going to delay it by quite some time, right? I would say in that case, you're looking probably at least a couple months, but it really can vary at that point, again, depending on, you know, how serious is what they find in your background, how long ago did it occur, how many incidences do you have that they need to look into, and then also if you have to go through that full exemption process, how quickly do you get all those documents back in that they ask for and all of that. So either way, if there's something in your background, you're probably looking at least a couple months and could be longer depending on your particular circumstances. But if there's nothing in your background at all, I would say about 2 to 4 weeks by mail, and usually just a couple days if you do it all online.
Perfect. And is this a permanent clearance as long as the applicant doesn't commit a crime, or is this something that they need to renew every so often?
No, correct. It never expires on its own, right? So you don't have to renew it. It's permanent. It's for life. Like I say, unless something happens going forward, it's updated on a per incident basis. So if you get arrested in California, something like that, then it can be revoked, but it will never just expire on its own after a given amount of time. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but again, right now that RAPBAC service is only for California. The FBI, they don't have the RAPBAC yet, but I would assume, I know the state is working on getting those FBI RAPBACs, and I think it'll probably happen within the next couple of years, but I don't know exactly when. But for now, yeah, it's just the California that gets the RAPBAC, and that would be the only reason you would be revoked. It won't just expire on its own.
Perfect. Thank you so much again. I truly appreciate your time and all the information they provided. Is there anything else that you think that it's important for either parents who are looking to hire a nanny, agencies, or the applicants themselves that they should know about your program and things that they should be aware of in order to apply or request information from somebody that's taking care of a child or a family member?
Trustline is a background check. It's a tool for parents to use when hiring a nanny or babysitter or caretaker for their family. It's not the end all be all, right? And so I would encourage people to go to our website. We do have some other resources on our website that can help parents in hiring a nanny. I think there's some sample interview questions and things like that. So please, trustline.org, check out our website. There's a lot of resources there.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Once again, I truly appreciate your time and all the information that you have provided.
You're welcome. Yeah, of course. Happy to help.
Thank you so much.